Hello and welcome to the Be Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast, where this is all about reshaping life, leadership, and business. And I'm really thrilled to have here today, all the way from Switzerland, where it is -3 degrees, and here I am in the height of summer. Anuranjita Kumar, welcome to the show. Anu, I'm going to call you Anu. I hope I pronounced your name right. Also, did I
Oh,
get it
yes.
right?
Well, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Bay, for having me. I think it's a pleasure, and I'm really envious of the fact that you're in the summertime in Australia, and I'd love to swap places if I could. But look, hey, if you love skiing, then come and
I
see
was
me in
about to
Switzerland,
say.
and the slopes are fabulous because
uh,
we've had a blizzard last weekend.
Yeah, I would love to be. I've never been to Switzerland. It's one of my places I want to go to. But we've got a bit to chat about. And based on like just meeting you and having a quick chat pre-show, wow, what a power woman, but also just incredibly humble and just a gorgeous, beautiful energy. And so you're the co-founder and CEO of We Ace, and you started the company 4 years ago, which is a digital platform for coaching, mentoring, and basically upskilling individuals at an exec level. And I'm keen to hear more about that. But also, you have pretty much what am I trying to say here? You've pretty much trotted the globe in terms of you've had all these different roles all around the world. In the likes of a former senior HR leader at Citi RBS, you've had board roles. And then there's this business now, which is WeAce, and you're covering Asia, India, Europe, Singapore, and Dubai, and you're building out the Europe business. You're also a mum to a daughter and a son. Tell us about your journey, how you like went from the roles you've been in and then decided to start your own business 4 years ago. I'm really intrigued by it.
Well, thank you. I think, you've been very kind in terms of what you've shared about me, and that's very humbling. Um, when I started my journey way back in the mid 90s, I won't tell you when because then you know how old I am, uh, but you know, if I was to go back when I was 21, I didn't think I was thinking much.
Yeah.
I was probably all I knew that I wanted to be quote unquote successful, right? I had no idea what success meant. In my little head at that point of time, it meant having a steady income. It meant maybe at some point of time having a house. Husband was a, byproduct of my journey. And then there was one thing which I really wanted to do even as a kid is travel and see the
Mm,
world,
mm,
right? So as much as I came from India and I had seen, what that part of the world contained, but there was this real urge in me in terms of discovering what the planet holds. So I'd always aspired to work across different parts of the world, and somewhere when you wish it so hard and you manifest it, as they say. And that, in my career journey, somewhere that happened as I went along. So I started my career, and actually, if I was to rewind, I started thinking about what I wanted to do when I was in school and college. My parents are doctors, so they aspired that one of their kids should be a doctor. And then when I went to a medical school, did not want to be a doctor. I think my mom almost had a heart attack and she was like,
I
oh,
could
how
imagine.
go to something like that? But anyway, that's a long story and we'll save it for another time. And that's what prompted me to move from life sciences into humanities, which is
Yeah.
psychology and management. And as I graduated, I joined P&G from campus. My to-be husband then, who I found in business school, was with Unilever, which is not an alliance which we could have had. And that's what prompted me to move to City. So I think my life I went with the flow.
Yeah.
I had a broad idea about what I wanted to do in life. But at 21, what do you know? You
Yeah.
can only plan
I
for the
know.
next week, right? And I think they were happy times. I wish, I could go back to a zone that I wasn't planning too much and I just embraced the life how it was. So that is the real answer. But then life happens as you go along. And for me, once I joined City, I kind of trotted across the world. And before I knew, 20 years were over, two kids happened, and life went through its own ups and downs. Working across different geographies
Mm,
was a bit of an experience. There was a unlearning and there was a relearning
Yeah,
about
totally.
how you work in different parts of the world, the way we work in Asia versus the way we work in the US versus the way we work in Europe. For me, there was a constant learning which was going on. The ways of working, it wasn't just technicalities about clients and the business and the franchises, but how do I interact with people?
Yeah.
And to me, that was the core of who I became. I think the way I would describe on my Twitter profile as well is I'm a culturally agile person. And
Yeah, you are.
in the moment, thank you, in the moment, I just want to be with the person that I'm talking to. So that was my biggest takeaway of 20 years. And on the back of it, after working for 28 years, and this was pre-COVID, I just, had this yearning of doing something else. It was the 21-year-old who wanted to go with the flow, but change the tide, right? And this thought had been in my mind that I wanted to do something different, but I was kind of paralyzed because, in a corporate job, it's so sanitized. You
Oh,
have a
so
great job, you have a
sanitized.
great office, you know what I mean, right? You have a steady flow of income, and those jobs don't teach us risk taking in many ways. You're so protected. Even if you look at colleges, they don't teach us risk taking,
No.
right? So there was a part of me which wanted to do something different. And I, but I was a bit risk aversive that if I give this up and if this doesn't work out, what the hell will I do in my life? Till somebody asked me a very pointed question about why aren't you doing this? And I said, what if it doesn't work? And the person said, what if it does?
Yeah, totally.
That was the turning point. And then I thought about it, and it was like, if it doesn't work, then you go and find yourself another job, right? Life is not coming to a standstill just because you decided to follow your heart. And for whatever reason, it didn't work out. So I learned that failure is not such a bad thing and it should not dissuade me from doing what I passionately wanted to do. And after working for 28 years, I owe it to myself at least 18 months to 24 months to be able to give it a shot. And if it didn't work, yeah, I go figure myself
Mm,
out in
mm,
another
mm.
corporate job, right? But that was not to be. I took this decision to launch VA sometime in 2020, oblivious of COVID.
I was about to
Okay.
say, right, so another COVID baby, because a lot of people I'm talking to on the pod, it's like they've had this awakening, if you like, and then they're telling me, but then I launched this business in COVID, and I'm like, oh,
No, but the funny thing was, I thought about it pre-COVID. I
yeah,
quit during COVID, and my company kept calling me back and saying, "Hey, are you sure? Because this is not getting better." I think the good part is, well, there were two things. One is there was this whole urge to create something, but I didn't know
what it was.
what the journey would look like,
Yeah,
right? The ups and downs. And I'm glad I was ignorant because had I known, maybe that would have dissuaded me.
yeah.
Because you're an entrepreneur now, right? There are ups and downs,
Oh,
there are low moments. It's tough
it's
in the initial
really
days.
tough. And I
Yes.
get a lot of energy and I guess inspiration from talking to people like yourself on the show because for me, there's no turning back. Like, and once you said it to me pre-show, there's the destiny and things like that. Once you make a decision like this and then back to manifestation, the universe works in mysterious ways, if you ask me. And even if you
Yeah.
try and go back and look for a job, it's like, stick. Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like it's going with the flow, but you're trying to control it.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it was meant to be, and you're absolutely right. The tougher moments happen, and there were times you debate, why did you do this? So 2020 was a year of transition for me,
Mm.
where I exited because there was a notice period, all of those good things, and then I exited. I started curating the concept that I had in mind. 21, I went out, raised some money, right? And I think I was riding high at that time because I just quit and we raised about, enough seed money to launch the business. 21 year end, we built the tech platform. Here is the funny bit. I didn't know a T of technology. Okay. And I am visualizing this digital platform. Okay. We started coaching and mentoring women and then we pivoted. It was, and then I got it wrong, horribly wrong. I got my first prototype horribly wrong. Then I vowed to myself to teach myself technology. I must have done every free course on
Oh my
Microsoft
gosh.
or you name it, right? To just, so nobody can take me
Understand it.
for a ride. And then in 22, we launched the business. It was the time of COVID, so digital was really getting traction. We zoomed through because a lot of women were quitting. So a lot of company, we were a B2B, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of companies started using the platform. And then we quickly realized within a year that yeah, we can focus on women, but everybody needs help. So we pivoted and we said we'll be all inclusive in the spirit of inclusion.
Yeah, I
So
love that.
now we are a B2B digital platform for coaching and mentoring for execs. And, over a period of time, we started fine-tuning the product. Our GTM was very sharp because we do have big players in US or Europe. So we went after Asia. And, not to say Asia is different, as every MNC will tell you, but Asia has its nuances, and you
Mm.
can't just impose a product from a US into Asia. The way of working in Asia is different. So we tweaked the product to Asia, then we went after Middle East and Africa. And these two regions, we have a very, very strong presence. And now we're taking on Europe, right? Because we feel strong enough to push back our global competition in Europe. And it's a pleasure. We are RFPing with big names and all of that. We win some, we lose some. That's okay. But I think it's been a hell of a journey, trying to figure it out. The whole thing about going with the flow, I think has kept me sane because I don't try and overanalyze and
Yeah.
overthink things because I realize the difference between a corporate journey and an entrepreneur's journey is you live every day, you live every week, and you live every month. Don't try and plan for a future that you can't see. Be prepared, prepare your best, but be ready for the worst. So those were some of my reflections and journey of my,
I love that.
what I've done. And I'm going to pause here because I can go on and on with
Yeah, no,
this.
and I know that we've only really got 10 minutes. This is a a fluid conversation. So many questions for you, but I'll keep them tight. Your business model, no, first of all, WeAce. Where did WeAce come from? That's the brand bit in me, like, because I love it. It's very inclusive when you talk about we. And I feel like if I was a client of yours, I feel like it's a partnership sort of thing. So how did you come up with the name or the brand?
Yeah, so we ACE actually we called it ACE because it's accelerated career experiences, right?
Ah, there you go.
And then we put the we because we wanted to drive the inclusive sense of what we do. So that was the genesis of the name. And at some point of time, my marketing team was like, maybe we should drop the we. But now the name has
No,
become like so big for us that we just stay with the brand the way it is.
no, don't
But
don't
it
drop
was
the we.
driving Yeah, it was driving two things. One is inclusion and career experiences for individuals. So it doesn't matter who you are, gender, orientations, everything. We're there for you for
Mm,
any kind of coaching or mentoring that you may need to accelerate your career. And
yeah.
sorry, I have about 40 minutes, so just in
Oh,
case
okay,
I
cool. Sorry, I must have got the time differences wrong. Like, when you were like, I'm trying to okay, great.
9:30 my time.
Ah,
Apologies.
I thought you said nine, and I was like, oh gosh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, that's good
9:30.
then. So that kind of leads me then into my next question, really, because you've got this tech platform, this digital platform, and obviously the ability, like tech, like we're in a revolution, right? And I'd love your thoughts on this because I picked up on at the start of our conversation that you love connecting with people and that the opportunity to travel around the world and work with all the different cultures and the different countries and the ability to be present with people is what you love and what you do. And a lot of the conversations I've been having of recent around this, collaboration between whether you call it, the machine or AI and the human. And you were just talking about there's obviously nuances and differences between the different cultures. There absolutely is. I know that when I've worked with different, from an Asian, Japanese culture in business versus the culture here in Australia, it's very different. And obviously you need to learn it. And I love learning that sort of thing. You've created this bespoke product for the different countries. How do you bring the two together in terms of the human aspect and then also obviously the collaboration with the platform as such and digital and the interaction with your clients? Have you seen, I guess, a notable difference from when you started the business to now, given the revolution we're in, or were you already ahead of time? It's quite a few
Yeah.
questions in there, I think, or
Yeah, so
observations.
I'm gonna just break it down. So
Yeah,
one is, how do we nuance the AI and the coaching, AI and the human
yeah,
bit across cultures, right? So let me, is
yeah.
that, have I captured that
Yes,
right?
that is, yes.
Cool. So look, I think AI as a technology is evolving so fast. And in the morning, I was talking to my team and I said, till 2025, quarter one, AI was a USP for many tech platforms.
Mm,
I have an AI bot, I
mm,
have this,
mm,
right? Today, Belinda, it's a hygiene factor. It's
mm-hmm.
not a USP, right?
No,
It's like me saying, I have a platform, and guess what? I have a video app. And you're going to turn around saying, like, what's the big deal about that?
100%.
Everybody, video apps are available by the dozen everywhere. Agentic AI is exactly similar. So it has really changed just in a year's time, where we all were super excited in 23, 24 about OpenAI and ChatGPT. Now, for example, on bots, I work with, of course, ChatGPT, I work with Claude, I work with Comet, I work with Perplexity. I mean, there's so many bots,
Yeah, so
right? The
many.
incremental difference between all of them as a consumer is minor. Some is faster, some is more data driven. That's about it. So for me, I mean, I have a battery of bots that work for me, but I'm always wanting to engage with humans. So for me, I think as I see this evolving, my perspective is
Yeah,
that the two will coexist,
yeah,
right? It is,
yeah,
I don't believe that agentic AI is completely replacing the human connect. It will replace some pieces of work which are mundane, but that happened when banking went,
mm,
online, right?
mm,
So instead of going to the tellers, you can check your balances online, similar stuff. So absolutely, there is some routine work which will be more easier to be done by bots. For example, data analytics, right? There is no way you and I can remember so much data because we have so much memory in our brains. But the empathy and the connect piece is a long way off, right? So I will be my day-to-day mundane stuff, day-to-day talking, data cards, Q&As. I am going to AI.
yeah,
But when I want to have conversations about how do you feel, Belinda, today? And I want to connect and see what's going on for you and what can I learn from you. I'm having a tough day today. I will want to speak to a human. So
yeah,
I think these are nuances which I think will be universal.
yeah.
When it comes to perspectives, I also feel that tech and AI are extraordinary at spotting patterns at scale. They remember everything because it's a bot. They move very fast without getting fatigued. If you're talking to an analyst in the team, they may have a brain fatigue with the amount of data. Humans, on the other side, are very extraordinary at sensing the context, right? Holding ambiguity, because everything is not data driven,
No,
understanding emotion, power, history, and unspoken signals. I am sensing that vibe or that energy from you. So I think the nuance is that machines are brilliant at answers and human beings are irreplaceable at the questions. So when I get cautious is when we expect AI to replace judgment rather than to support it.
couldn't
And I
agree
think
more.
yeah, and I think in leadership, coaching, or decision making, we use AI, which can surface insights. AI can prompt reflections. AI can accelerate thinking, but meaning still comes from humans.
Mm,
So, in a nutshell, connection doesn't happen because information is shared, right? Connection happens because something is felt, it's seen, it's understood, and something lies often between the lines. So
mm,
the healthiest collaboration I see is AI is handling the load, humans are holding the weight. The load is data, which is scheduling, analysis, weight is empathy, consequences, choice. So for me, the question is, can AI connect us? um, Rather, the question is not if the AI can connect us, it is, are we using AI to create more space for real human connections or
yeah,
less? So when technology creates presence, reflections, better conversations, it's very powerful. When it replaces it, I think we lose something essential, And that's the line we have to keep watching out for.
Yeah, you're so true. It's exactly, yeah, I love your response to that. Thank you so much because you're absolutely right. And I think this is where, you know, there's this fear still around, oh my God, it's going to take my role, it's going to take my job, but it's going to actually open up way more opportunities for like the things that we should be doing as leaders, but like that critical thinking, like you're talking about, the problem solving, all those types of roles that are so required as we go forward. And I think that's where the opportunities are endless. In terms of what are you seeing as at the moment, like, you're obviously working across different cultures and, from you've got a global business. What are you seeing as, like, do you see common themes that are coming through at the moment with regards to, people at exec level and leadership? I'd love your thoughts on that because we talk a lot around burnout and, like, more and more it's getting back to your purpose, etc. But I also think about burnout and it's such it's a word. It's a big word, but there's so much meaning underneath it. And I see a lot of different themes with leaders, that you can call out and you can't just put it under burnout. Like, do you know what I mean? And so I'd love your thoughts on what are you seeing as the biggest, I guess, themes and opportunities for leaders, coming into this year that we're in now.
Sure. So I think the core themes across geographies and culture, I mean, great coaching always anchors on a few human constants, according to me, right? And the first one I see coming across when we do exec coaching, it is always to do with purpose and identity,
Mm,
right? Who am I? What we want to do? It's such a basic question, and I think somewhere we all keep searching for it in different ways. People don't know sometimes how they don't even know what if they're dealing with it. It'll
yeah.
come across in a way that I'm not really happy in this job, or I'm not really sure. When you ask them what excites you, it's a very deep question for many people. What do you think you want to do? Not sure. I know that I need the money, right? Not sure. So it's a deep question, which I think we're searching for, and it's an existential question, but it does come up. Identity and confidence are at the core of what leaders ask us. Am I good enough for what's being asked? Am I sure about what I want to do? Why am I here?
Mm,
Right? And maybe also we are humans are not constant, right? I mean, you and I are doing what we are passionate about, but maybe in a few years, Belinda, I would have grown out of this, right? I would have said, okay, I've done this for 7, 8 years, and now I need to pass the baton and work on something else because my goalpost has moved.
mm.
So this comes up very often. In senior leaders, we tend to find a lot of imposter syndrome, legacy, anxiety. In emerging leaders, we tend to work on self-doubts, fear of visibility, things like that. Second very common area we find is transition and reinvention. This is common across geographies. I'll come to differences as well. And I think this is related to role transitions, scale up phases, crisis of failures, and the language of transition changes across geography. Whether the problem is universal, but the way I'll be working with somebody in Australia versus Singapore versus India is very different because we are a product of how we've been socialized or brought up. Even the kind of English words have different meanings in different geographies. A
Mm.
word like interesting in London may mean dubious, whereas in India may mean, oh, great, right? So
Yeah.
language differences in English language exist. The third area is around power, influence, and presence.
Mm.
Okay. So this is how to be heard, how to influence without authority, how to balance confidence with humility. And the way this is done across cultures is different, but the area is the same. So coaching often becomes a safe space to practice power responsibly. The fourth one I would say is the emotional regulation under pressure.
Yeah.
Lately, I find a lot of stuff around I'm very stressed. Like I'm doing some work with a client in Europe where pressure is high, market is disrupted, quarter sales are not happening. So coaching is where leaders learn to pause, respond, choose instead of reacting. And
Mm.
the last one I would say is meaning and legacy, right? What am I going to leave behind? So these are the questions which I find are common across geographies. Maybe the ways and the interpretation may be different, but the areas are common. Where cultures differ in the region that I work, I don't work in the US, but I think, for example, in Europe, where I'm based, or Western Europe, more, I wouldn't say South, because even Europe is not a homogeneous cluster. Southern
Yeah.
Europe, Western Europe, Anglo-Saxon culture, Southern European culture, different, right? So, but Western Europe, Nordics, I would say, their relationship to authority is very different. Okay. So, flat structure, high autonomy, coaching here focuses on influence without hierarchy. And leaders tend to, the decision making pace is very different. I wouldn't say it's slow or it's long, but it's different. So how, if they're running a global rollout of here, the way you will move in Asia or emerging markets is 70% done, let's move. Okay.
Yeah.
Time is money, honey. That's not how Europe works. So it depends if you're doing a European role or if you're doing a global role. India or Asia is very hierarchical and respect driven. Let's leave Australia aside, okay? But the rest of Asia is very authority driven. Coaching here focuses on assertiveness, boundaries, and voice,
Mm.
right? Because I am taught when I'm growing up, respect elders,
Yeah.
right? So I respect authority. Okay, I don't challenge it. So leaders struggle to challenge upwards here. And that's the way of working. If you look at Middle East, it's a very strong authority and relationship based power. Okay,
Mm.
so it's somewhere between the other two geographies. And coaching here focuses on credibility, trust, and political navigation. And leaders here will struggle with ambiguity and direct feedback, right? I mean, I can go on and on. So this is,
Fascinating
this.
though, isn't it? Like that, sorry to interrupt you, but the different cultures and what you're just calling out, like it's absolutely fascinating because it kind of goes back to like power, what power means or what, decision making means in one country versus another country is so different and can be so different.
Yeah. And
Mm.
also emotional expression. So that was about authority. If you look at the way people express their emotions, Australia is closer to Asia because I have some really good friends. And, it's friendly, the style of working is friendly, whereas Europe will be more reserved. You don't go to like even within Europe, like in UK, if you are going, I mean, weather is a conversation breaker, right? It's very cold, it's very hot, and you standing in the airport in a line, hey, it's very cold. So I tried the same thing in Switzerland where I'm based, and I was standing in the airport and I'm like, it's so cold today. And the guy just turned around saying, yeah, it's winter. I mean, like, what the shit? I mean, like, don't you guys, sorry about that, but like, it's
No, I know
obvious,
what you're
right?
saying.
So it's very, so I think unlike US or Australia, where you're comfortable verbalizing emotions, Europe is not. So a lot more self-aware empathy. Whereas in Asia, emotion is internalized and coaching focuses on confidence because people take their decisions on emotions. And the
Mm.
third thing, which I will just, the two things more I want to talk about, is also the views of failure. Because you and I, being an entrepreneur, in US or Europe, in many ways, actually, I'll split US and Europe. In US, if you look at the Silicon Valley, failure is equal to learning.
Yeah.
Okay. Coaching emphasizes risk taking and stretch. In Europe, failure is equal to reputation risk. So coaching focuses on decision quality and confidence. Asia, Middle East, failure is equal to loss of face, right? So coaching has to focus on resilience and reframing. And bringing this all together, the feedback style that a coach has to use are also different. So if you look at direct talking culture, US, Germany, straight on. If you're talking to Germans, Swiss, US, hey, this is bad, okay? In in London, do not do this. You will say, hey, this looks good, but okay,
Yeah.
you do not go and say
Yeah,
this is bad.
absolutely.
You have to refine. Like in Asia, the feedback is very contextual. Okay, you cannot be direct. So just my little tweaks of, what nuances I see in my world of coaching, mentoring what are the areas, and I hope that was useful.
No, it was super helpful, and it's interesting you share all of this because I've interviewed close to I think about I'm coming up to like 300 people since last February, on this podcast, and it's fascinating because I've been talking to people all around the world, and some of the themes that you've called out, absolutely, like it's bang on. But I hadn't thought about it in the way you've called it out from, how then you coach the different styles because like even like from Israel, like failure is embraced. Like they're like, but they don't give up. They've got this whole thing around, not never giving up. And so it's really interesting that you call all of this out. My question comes, my question, I guess, now is what's your view on intuition? Like, like in terms of even just talking about everything you've just shared from coaching and how the different styles and, kind of to, I guess, accommodate the different cultures. You being you, in terms of this ability to be able to put the different, let's just say, hat on, for example. Like, do you think that, I mean, where does intuition come into play here for you, do you think, as a coach?
Hmm. That's a really interesting question, and I think it's a very nuanced question in many ways. And in my head, intuition and coaching is about, there's no magic. It's a pattern wisdom, if I can call it,
Yep.
right? So, you've kind of grown up in a certain way, and that's, you bring your worldview, but, you go through a bit of a certification with coaching, which teaches you how to
Yes.
use your intuition, right? So, intuition in coaching is often misunderstood as a gut feel or instinct,
Mm,
okay? In reality, it is somewhat of compressed experience meeting the present moment.
mm,
Okay. So great coaches are not guessing. They're recognizing patterns faster than logic can articulate.
mm, mm,
Okay. And where intuition for me really shows up as a coach, and for other coaches, I would assume, is first point is hearing what is not being said.
mm.
Okay. Intuition allows a coach to notice from experience hesitation before an answer, right? The emotion behind a very logical response.
Yeah.
And the mismatch between words and energy. You can say, hey, I'm feeling really good today, right? Now, you're saying it, but I can see that actually that's not how you're communicating it with me, right? Because your tone of the voice went down. So often the most important insight sits between the sentences, not inside them. So that's the first point. Second is my intuition or my compressed wisdom teaches me knowing when to intervene, not just what to say. And silence to me is a big factor. So many times when I sit in sessions, I just keep quiet, right? And it prompts people to fill the gap.
Yeah.
So two coaches can ask the same question, only one asks it at the right moment.
Mm,
So when do you really speak up? So intuition guides you when to challenge, when to hold silence, when to slow down a conversation, and timing is everything in a conversation.
mm,
The third and the last thing is choosing the right hat in the moment.
mm.
Great coaches constantly switch hats, often within minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. So they could be listener, creating psychological safety. They could be mirror, which means I'm reflecting patterns back. So when you ask me a question, I said, is this what you are asking? That is mirroring. Okay. Challenging, disrupting the comfort. Why do you think this really happens? What's making you uncomfortable?
Mm,
Right? That's disrupting. Strategist, connecting insight to action. Okay, so you told me you wanted to do this. Now, how is this action connected to that? Okay.
mm, mm,
Human, acknowledging emotion. It seems like you're not feeling very happy today. You're acknowledging the emotion and validating.
mm.
So intuition tells the coach which hat is needed now, not which one they prefer. So they have to keep changing their hat. So I think intuition versus structure, they're not opposites, but the best coaching lives at the intersection of structure and intuition.
I couldn't.
Structure of a coaching gives me safety. Intuition gives me depth.
Yeah.
Structure frames the journey I am going on with the coachee. Intuition navigates my terrain,
Yeah.
right? And so I think I would just kind of recap. I think intuition is not innate, a talent. It's built through thousands of human conversation. It's exposure to failure, pressure, doubt. It's deep listening without rushing to fix anything, and self awareness of one's own triggers. And this is why experienced leaders often make very powerful quotes. At VAs, we say performance focused and practitioner led. A lot of our coaches actually come from um, serious line experiences
Yeah,
where they have lived the complexity of
yeah.
things.
Because you're coaching, like I mean, I know from my own experience with 150 staff, like it's not, it is like you're working with people, and I've always been the believer that understanding what's actually going on besides just at work, like bring, really getting to understand it, and like I think that it is part of the role, and you just get to know people a lot more deeper that way. The other part for me is, you talked around resilience, and we're in this non-linear world. It's no longer going from A to B, and I think that's really interesting in terms of the ability to, when you talk around structure and intuition, in this world we're in, I think as well as for leaders, and coaches, it's the ability to be able to, one, provide the structure, and two, like you say, harness the intuition to really be able to then be able to pivot and be able to, I guess, feel comfortable in such a uncertain world that we're in right now, and be okay with the ambiguity, if that makes sense. And I think that's a really big, I guess, for me, opportunity as well, with leaders, because here in Australia, everyone, not everyone, I shouldn't say that, but there's still this desire to go back to, the way things were pre-COVID, or, like holding on and trying to control things. But at the end of the day, the world is changing so fast. It's like back to, I guess, where I'm landing with this is, you talked around, the ability to be able to go with the flow. And I'm not getting all woo-woo on this,
Yeah,
but we have to somewhat be able to do that.
that's right. That's right. Very well said, Belinda.
Yeah, and I guess, and that's what I was going to ask you, because the other part that came up for me when in listening to you was the emerging leaders and the experienced leaders. And it was interesting what you called out in terms of the, I guess, the what you're seeing in terms of, I guess the themes coming out from the experienced leaders and the emerging leaders. And the one observation I had listening to you was, at the end of the day, we've all got these almost like critiquing ourselves, these different types of self-doubt, or, what you said about the younger generation. I was quite like, I mean, I speak to, I was actually quite, they come across like they're very together, and they've got more front than we've got a term in Australia, they've got more front than Maya, which is a retail store. But actually, when you really do dig into it, and then you look at the older generation, and it's like these two together. Yeah. Anyway, it was just an observation that I noticed, and for me, it's very interesting.
Hmm. Hmm. So I think I agree with the observation. The I think when you're young, and this is what I was sharing, that when I was a 21-year-old, I had no idea, right, what the future held for me, which is like I was blissfully ignorant
Mm,
about what would happen. And I'm glad I was, right? Because that prompted me to take a journey which was different. I just wanted to travel the world, so I wanted to work in a place which could aid that aspiration. But apart from that, I didn't have too many hang-ups, let's put it like that. I mean, I was happy to go with the flow. Had I known what it meant, maybe I would have thought about it again. So I think at 21, 22, being blissfully ignorant up to a point is good, but being overconfident on data is not so good. So it's
no.
a bit like, I know what I'm doing. And, we've all had kids and teenagers, and it's a tough time where parents are like, I know what I'm doing. I mean, don't interfere. I mean, if I want to jump off the
Yeah.
cliff, like, you can't as a parent, right?
No.
I think parent role is different. I mean, you will navigate the kids to land safely. But I think where it hurts the younger generation is when they're not open to new ideas and listening to different ways of doing things.
Mm.
And they get very rigid about my way or highway. I think, and that could be true for any generation. But I think when kids have so much, I think today's kids have so much information overload. I
Yeah,
mean, technology is fighting, it's an attention economy, right? Everybody's fighting for their attention, whether it's social media, whether
yeah,
it's
wild.
bots. Yeah. So, and also, I think if they put their mind to things and they have so, their life is so much easier. I mean, for me to start something when I was 21 was very tough.
Yeah,
I did not have cloud. I did not have bots. I could have to create my own website. The regulations were all over the place. There was no way in hell did have the luxury which today's kids have. But that's assume every generation thinks about the younger generation. But I think they are privileged to that extent. And if they can use their privilege rightly, I think they can go faster. They can accelerate their
yeah,
journey way faster than I have done. So to me, that is very important. For the older generation, I think the challenges are very different, right? We have been there, done that. And I think for emerging leader, if I just focus on their confidence as an armor, they are able to come across as more articulate, more decisive, sometimes a little opinionated, but and they're very comfortable with visibility. You know, every little person is an influencer and they have a big Instagram
very
following.
true.
When you go beneath the surface, you often find fear of being exposed because the depth is not there as yet,
Yeah,
right?
you're right. Yeah.
An anxiety of being found out, pressure to prove my worth quickly. I want, if you look at the photograph cultures,
Uh,
right? How do I want my photos? The number of apps which give you filter. Why? Because your identity is being tied to this persona. Okay. So I find that the younger kids sometimes have confusion between confidence and certainty and what is their external persona versus who they can really be. And the ones who get lost in that path need some support. And they're obviously
yeah,
pretty much, their confidence is often performative. It's not rooted. Whereas experienced leaders, you know, the debate is always doubt as wisdom. So, more seasoned leaders will often speak cautiously. They will pause before committing. They will ask more questions than they answer. And they downplay certainty because they've been there, done that. Right? So, they know that life is not certain. There is a lot of ambiguity. Then, a lot of things not under your control. And there are variables which will hit you when you expect them not to. And this is often misread as lack of energy, their resistance to change, or their loss of ambition.
mm,
In reality, the senior leaders are very good at pattern recognition because they have spent 20 years, you know, looking at patterns.
very true.
They are very good at to to recognize a scar tissue from past failures, right?
Mm,
Their wounds, okay? Their awareness of second and third order is very high because they have gone through the experience. So their doubt is not insecurity. To me, it's called earned humility.
I love it. So good, Anu. You've got like, I mean, so much like wisdom here and just so much knowledge. It's just, it's super impressive, to be honest. It really is. And I've loved talking to you. Tell me, I'm conscious now that it is pretty much time to let you get back to your day because I know it's just the start of your day. What would be one? It's either advice or because you've given us so much advice, and I think the audience is absolutely going to love all this advice that you're providing. But then, what would be? I guess we're at the start of the year. Here's my little, I guess, musing at the moment. We're at the start of the year, and I'm reading a lot and seeing a lot online in terms of goals this, performance, like, there's almost like this fear mongering out there, in terms of it's okay if you haven't like hit your resolution, it's not too late, and all of that sort of thing. And I want to come back to presence and the power of the pause and the power of the presence. And I guess coming back to the ability to take our hands off the steering wheel a little bit and letting things happen the way they're meant to happen at times. And I'm not suggesting we just sit here and do nothing and let, the universe do its thing because you still play a role in it. But based on what piece of advice would you give somebody, I guess, at an exec level or, an emerging leader who was sitting here right now going, I'm at the start of 2026. and I don't know what my plan is for this year, what would be your advice to them?
Mhm. Look, I think again, it'll have to be contextual. So I will
Yeah,
share my perspective because everybody has a different context. I think before I get into the present, I just want to share that the biggest lesson life has taught me is that you don't grow by adding more to who you are
no, I
at my stage. You grow by letting go of who you no longer need to be.
was hoping you would say something like that.
Yeah. And if you want to expand it naturally, then, I think for years, I thought growth meant accumulating roles, responsibilities, proof. But life, especially loss and reinvention, taught me that the real growth is subtractive, right? Letting go of identities that once protected you. I mean, you and I have both worked in big companies, and our visiting cards got us a lot of access. But letting that go of was letting, like being a managing director in City or in NatWest or in RBS was letting go of a part of me. But it's also like a graduation from a college, right? That title will always be there with me, but I have to put an end date to it. It's not there for posterity. Letting go of certainty when it starts to cage you, right? How do let's say I'm in my 50s, another 30, 35 years on this planet. I want to experience a lot more.
Yeah, I was thinking
So
about the other day at 48. I'm 48, and I was looking in the mirror the other day
I'm in my
going,
50s, right? Letting go of the need to be constantly impressive to someone.
mm,
Right? So what remains after that letting go is quieter, but it's truer. And from that place, your choices become lighter, braver, and more aligned. So I think this is my perspective, but I would just say, look, in terms of now going forward, leadership advice for 2026, basis this, I would say move from control to presence.
mm,
And like you said, for years, leadership is rewarded for hands firmly on the steering wheel,
yeah,
constant availability, being the smartest person in the room. In 2026, that model will have to quietly break, okay? Because there's so much change which is coming. Geopolitics is of a different order. And I think what I would advise people who are listening to this podcast is to reflect on what coming back to power really means.
yeah,
Power is not about grip, it is about a choice. And in my view, the strongest leaders in 2026 will be the ones who know when to step in and when not to.
mm,
Resist the urge to rescue, allow others to struggle just enough to grow. So it's a strategic restraint. So that's one. Second is, I think that your presence will outperform the hustle. So presence is the new performance multiplier, as per me.
I
A
love
present leader is somebody who listens without rehearsing the replies, right? Decides without panic, creates calm in complexity, and that is the state of emotional steadiness. And I would also lastly advising take your hands off the steering wheel at the right moments. Okay. Many leaders confuse control with responsibility.
yeah,
If in 2026 you can slow down that control, then the presence will scale you. And think about when am I still driving because I don't trust the system I built? Is this the reason I'm driving, or is there something else? So simple resolution, instead of saying I will do more, I will, for the leaders, I will say I will interfere less and observe more. In 2026, leadership is less about holding the wheel tighter and more about trusting the road that you have built, like you have done, Belinda. And, I am so impressed with how you are now taking a smooth and sailing ride on that road. There'll be always few bumps on the way, but
very.
that's what makes it
And you've
interesting.
actually given me some great coaching on today's show as well. Just reminders, and I think we all need it. And I just think it's so important to have someone like you on your side, and giving you that objective perspective as well. So last but not least, how do we find out more about We Ace? I mean, obviously, I've got your website, etc. And how do we find out more about you as well?
Yeah, well, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. And yes, you have the website, there is a phone number, there's an email. So anybody who's looking for executive coaching, mentoring, groups, we usually work through companies, but if anybody needs support one-on-one through the year, please feel free to reach out to us through the emailers and the numbers on the side. Apart from that, I also wanted to call out, there are two books I have written. So we do a lot of work with charity. and all the proceeds of the book go to charity. The book obviously are based on my favorite topic, which is inclusion. So I've written a lot about multicultural and how women work in the corporate world and the boardrooms. So if there are any reflections which anybody wants to contribute in line with the books, please write to me directly. That's something I do as a side gig, but it's a passion.
Amazing. And I'll share the books in the link as in the show notes as well, so that we can get people across the books also. So I love it. Author, look at you, incredible. So wishing you also a beautiful and peaceful 2026. And thank you so much, Anu, for coming on the show. It's been very special. So I truly appreciate it. And I'm glad that we were meant to do this last year, at the end of last year, and I asked if we could reschedule and talk about energy and just where you're at. And I feel like we were meant to have this conversation at this point in time versus last year. So thank you so much. Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
day.
Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.